Hello YouTube, we're on the real programming channel about HTML and CSS. My name is Andrei. I greet you. This is our 82 lesson and we'll talk about a final test drive for the headers. Let's go. So, once you've made all the changes to your blog.html, index.html and starbuzz.css files, reload the blog page. Notice that now the header rules apply only to the header at the very top of the page, which is just what we want. Meanwhile, the article header get the default style, which will work fine as well. Now the headers in the articles are formatted correctly. There are no dumb questions. We are doing a lot of work to add elements to the page and it looks exactly the same as it did before. Tell me again what all this is getting me. We replaced a few elements and added a few elements, and in the process we've added a lot of meaning to your pages. The browser, each search engines and applications for building web pages can, if they want to be a lot smarter about how they handle different parts of your page. And your page is easier for you and other web developers to read. Even though your page looks the same, it's a lot more meaningful under the covers. What's the difference between a section and an article again? They seem similar to me. It is easy to get confused about which element to use, so we're glad you asked it. The section element is more generic than article, but it's not as generic as a div. For instance, if you're just adding an element so you can style the page, then use a div. If you're adding an element to mark up content, that forms a well-defined section of related content, and then use section. And if you have some content that can be reused or distributed independently from the rest of the content on the page, then use article. Should every section and every article always have a header? Most of the time your sections and articles will have a header or at least a heading like h1. Think about it, content within an article element can be reused elsewhere, so chances are that content will need a header for descriptive or introduction purpose. Likewise, content with a section element is a group of related content in your page, so it will typically have some kind of header to separate and introduce that section of content. Should we use header only when we got more than one thing to put in it? What if we only got one heading and nothing else? You can use header even if you have only one heading to put in it. The header element provides extra semantic meaning that separate the header of a page, a section or an article from the rest of the content. However, it's not required that you always put your heading content in a header element. That is, the page will validate it if you don't. And being a forward thing, still I feel better. I know we're making the page as semantically sound as we can, but don't we need some navigation? How do I get from the home page to the blog and back? We agree, having multiple pages isn't going to do as much good if readers can't navigate between them. And to create navigation for these pages, we are going to use some of the tools we already know about, namely a list and some anchor text. Let's see how that works. First, create a set of links for our navigation. So, this is our code. We are leaving these three links blank because we won't be adding these pages, but you should feel free to create these pages. Now, wrap up do's and courses in an unordered list so we can treat them as a group of items. We haven't done this before, but watch how this works and see how lists are perfectly of navigation items. So, notice that link. Each link is now an item in an unordered list. This may not look much like navigation, but it will when we apply some style. Notice also that we are identifying one item as the selected one by using a class. Completed the navigation. Now place the navigation right into your HTML. Do that by inserting it just below the header in the blog.html file. So this is our code, and adding the navigation CSS. You can try that HTML if you want, but you won't be satisfied that it feels anything like navigation. So before you try it, let's add some CSS. We are adding, this is our CSS, adding a background color and some margins and padding. Notice that the bottom margins is 0 because the table display already has a 10 pixel border spacing at the top. Also notice that we remove the bullet from the list items and make sure and add this CSS to the bottom of your starbuzz.css file. Here we are changing the display of each list item from block to inline, so now the list items won't have a carriage return before and after. They'll all flow into one line on the page like regular inline elements do. We want the links in the navigation list to look a bit different from the rest of the links in the page. So we override the other rules for above this rule in the CSS with the rule that sets properties for above the links and the visited state of the links, so they look as the same. And finally, we are setting the background of the link content with the class selected, so the navigation item corresponding to the page where on looks different from the rest. Who needs GPS? Giving the navigation a test drive. And let's give this a try. Go ahead and get the CSS type into the bottom of your CSS file and then load in your page in your browser. Hey, not bad for a first try. We have got a nice navigation for that, even has page where on the blog page highlighted. But can we take this even future? After all, you're in the modern HTML chapter and we haven't used the new element from HTML5 for the navigation yet. As you probably guessed, we can improve this by adding a nav element to the HTML file. Doing so will give everyone, browser each engines, screen readers, your fellow web developers a bit more information about what this list really is. Adding a nav element. And as you already know, there is a now element. And using it is as simple as wrapping your navigation list with nav opening and closing text like this. Here is the nav starting tag, and we are enclosing the entire navigation list within a nav content element. And before we do any more testing, we really need to talk about your CSS. We should really talk about best practices. You see, right now your CSS assumes that every unordered list is a navigational menu. So what happens when the Starbuzz CEO needs to add a list of new cafes he is going to open in the blog? Disaster, he'll probably get navigation list right in the middle of his blog because it will be styled just like the navigation list we just added to the page. But no worries, To fix this potential problem, we just need to be more specific about targeting the navigation list items, and that's not hard because the only navigation list items we want to target are the ones contained within a nav element. And brain power. Before moving on, think through how you change the CSS to specifically target the navigation items and no other unordered lists. And next topic will be making our CSS more specific. And we'll talk about this in the next lesson. And this is our 82 lesson over. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel, please. Put likes, share with friends, comment, eat fruit, read more books, do exercise in the evening. After you have done all the work, and drink water. Thanks. Bye.